federal, state. The only one I probably don't have the guts for is school board, because you're on the line of fire. It's hard work. It's so important, and you're the unsung heroes of keeping it all together for our students and our school districts. And so I'm always grateful to people like Ed who step up and others. Assemblywoman Paula Kay has joined us. Paula, thank you for participating and your support for this important legislation. And our superintendent, Amy Creedon, the school district, I want to thank you. It's an extraordinary district. You know, it has a phenomenal reputation, and that starts with leadership from all of you here, and I'm happy you could join us. Well, and Deborah Heps, the Chief Operating Officer of the BOCES here. But we're talking about something that I'm absolutely passionate about. I've been on a journey since probably a year and a half, almost 2 years now, to talk about the mental health challenges that our students are facing, young people are facing, unprecedented, and trying to figure out, are they experiencing higher levels of anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts? Was it triggered by the pandemic and the isolation that they felt and that disconnect during really formative years in their lives, and many of them being denied the rituals of life, you know, the graduation from kindergarten, or middle school to high school, and high school graduations and proms. And so I think it had, any adult who thinks they're over the pandemic, talk to young people who experience it. They're not over it yet. I just need everybody to right set on that one. But also, this tracks the rise over the last decade of frequent, common use of cell phones in schools. Very few school districts stood up and said you can't do that, because it became really the norm. And it was hard. It would have been hard to stand up and say, well, we're the school that's going to do this, or the school board, or the superintendent, or even parents saying, my child will not be the one with the cell phone. There's a lot of peer pressure at many, many levels, and I understand that. So it just kind of continued, and what happened paralleling that was the rise in addictive algorithms being promoted by social media companies. And that was all about 10 years ago. And so you can see a definite rise in addictive algorithms bombarding our students and their minds all day long. The trajectory of that with the rise in mental health problems, absolute direct correlation. And people are only now uncovering that fact, and it is very late for the current students who've been subjected to this for a long time, those who've already graduated and those who are older students. But I want to make sure we save the next generation of students, that the students who are with us today, it's going to be a tough adjustment for many of them who are used to it, the younger ones not so much, but it's going to be like breaking an addiction. All of a sudden you've been smoking your whole life and people take the cigarettes away the next day. It is going to be hard. So I need people to acknowledge that, recognize that. Parents need to be on board with talking to their kids, and school districts pushing out the information that we've been creating to tell parents, weaning techniques. One school superintendent said he's already starting with, Mondays are entirely cell phone free in their house. He's actually says, it's surprising. My teenagers started bringing out board games, and there were conversations at the breakfast table and the dinner table, and he goes, we haven't had that in a long time. And I realized what our own practices at home were doing to our children. And so I'm encouraging parents to, be really focused on this. It's going to be hard for the kids. And for school districts, I can tell you right now, and the media should be aware, there's going to be disruptions. I mean, the first day, there's going to be confusion. What do you mean we have to lock it up? Where do we lock it up? What do we have to do? So all the education you can do in advance is going to help, but there'll be some school districts that have started and say, well, there's a long line the first few days because they have to get people acclimated to it. So expect some disruption. Change is hard. It is hard. But as I did my research and studied these trends and talked to countless parents and students about what's happening in their lives, I know we're on the right path. And history will look back at us and say, it's a shame it took so long. And education policy is not normally my jurisdiction, but I'm leaning into it because I'm also a mom. And I see what has happened to our young people, and I just can't ignore the voices of those crying for help, including the student at a roundtable I did at the beginning of my journey, And she says, we just can't put these down. We can't be the only one. We'll be ostracized, and we won't know what's happening. They're gathering in the girls' room and talking about me, and I've got to know that. I got to know what they're saying about my clothes, and I want to be at the party on Friday or not. She said, I cannot do that. She says, you've got to save us from ourselves. You've got to stop this. And I was like, that's all I needed to hear. That was a cry for help from students, and we will get through this adjustment, and our kids will be smarter because they'll be paying attention in class. Our poor teachers who are so frustrated with the competition with teaching math and competing with the TikTok dance video, it's hard. You're going to lose every time, I'm afraid. And so teachers are frustrated. Parents are seeing a change in their children that they don't understand, and we're going to help them understand this is for the better, despite your initial anxiety of having that disconnect from your child. You're used to that umbilical cord that has followed them from pregnancy all the way through school, and it's not going to be there. But the school districts are very thoughtful about making sure that parents know that they should have a way for parents to reach their students during the day and vice versa. There's a change in plans, or you forget your school lunch. When we forgot our school lunch, we borrowed our friend's sandwich and paid them back the next day, or borrowed 50 cents. So actually, people start talking to each other a little more. I think it's going to be good for the independence of students. And also, last thing is, these students will emerge as more well-adjusted individuals and ultimately adults. They won't be conditioned of staring at a hand. They'll be used to making eye contact. They'll be used to conversations again. Your halls are going to have noises you have not heard in years for the districts that have not gone first. And it's going to be beautiful. Even if it's arguing and fighting or whatever, it's just more real as opposed to this virtual, artificial world which our schools and students have descended into for a long time now. So I'm very optimistic about this. I want to make sure we hear from our individuals here and ask President Estrada to take it away. But I just want to thank Middletown School District for being open-minded to this conversation and getting your information in on time. Even adults sometimes are procrastinators, not just our students. And the vast, vast majority of school districts are there, and a few others need some help from us, and we'll get there. But thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you, Governor, first for allowing us the honor of having you come to Middletown. Everything that you've already discussed in your opening remarks is exactly what we experienced here at Middletown back in 2021 when we first went to a K through 12 bell-to-bell, no cell phone policy. We kind of tore off the Band-Aid right away here, and under the leadership of Pastor John Williams, who was president at the time, along with several of our other board members who are in attendance this afternoon, they, as well as us this year, understood the challenge in trying to implement the policy very quickly, because we saw there was a need and a problem, especially here at the high school level. But I think you're going to find out through our panel discussion, both from administrators and teachers and students, the benefits of having a bell-to-bell, no cell phone policy in place, and what that does for our students to be working on task each and every day. We're going to, exactly what you said, there were growing pains along the way, including the lines that you talked about, any special emergency. But you kind of go with the flow with that, and you correct wherever you need to correct. Here we have a mantra that it's okay to fail as long as you fix what is broken and then move on from there. Your points about what our students are experiencing from a mental hygiene approach. This is our first cohort that's graduating this year that went through the COVID years. So they missed out on some of the middle school peer-to-peer communications that they enjoy now because there are no cell phones. And I'm sure Superintendent Creedon, as we discuss it with the panel this morning, I'll point out how there's a huge reduction in social media related incidents because of not having cell phones in place here. So each and every year we improve on the policy. Our students each and every year have now gotten used to it, and as Ms. Creedon told me earlier, the first couple of years it was about changing the culture. And changing the culture, we at the Board of Education Last year, when we were doing the Yonder pouches, expanding that into the middle schools, the first statement I made as part of the school year was to the parents, and it was to say that this is not going anywhere. So it can either be an easy transition or a hard transition, depending on the conversation you have with your student at home before school starts each and every year. So we want to thank you for your leadership at the state level for expanding this statewide. It made our job a little bit easier and kind of patted ourselves on the back saying, okay, we were ahead of the game and we moved forward.
And you can be ambassadors to other school districts, and I encourage that, or other, teachers, your contemporaries, whether it's school board members, teachers, superintendent, principals. I think you can talk about, like I said, the growing pains. And again, it's not going to be a perfect rollout. It's just not possible. But eventually, you can tell us, or maybe someone can reflect on how long it took before it just sort of became normalized. And so,
Awesome. Yeah. So we're going to get ready in our panel discussion in a minute or so.
We're here in Middletown in this beautiful county, and I want to thank Ed Estrada, the president of the Middletown Board of Education, and Superintendent Amy Creedon, who's a superintendent of this fabulous area. And I want to thank both of them for being real visionaries. We just had a very impactful roundtable talking about their experiences, having been one of the early school districts in our state to go through a full bell-to-bell, distraction-free school experience. And overwhelmingly, hearing from them really made me feel more optimistic about what we're walking into and how the transition will be a little rough at start, as always, but change is hard. But then we're going to get to a place where we heard from the students. I mean, really transformational experience for them to talk about how students are making friends in person and communicating at a different level, and just their grades are getting better. They're feeling better about life. And so just hearing from the students themselves really made me proud that we're on this path just in a matter of weeks to be the largest state in America to have a full bell-to-bell K-12 distraction-free school experience. And so happy to take any on topics, and the superintendent and the president are certainly welcome to jump in and help me.
Governor, many parents are concerned that their children will not be able to contact them in an emergency, or if they feel imminent danger. In some cases, unfortunately, if there was an active shooter, for example, to say goodbye to their parents. How do you address that?
I will also let the people who are going through that experience explain, but this was my first concern as well. I'm a parent. You're always a parent first. You think of your children above everything and their safety. And unfortunately, our children live in a world where we have these horrific incidences which are just bone-chilling. But what I learned from law enforcement changed my mind completely on this issue. Police officers, sheriffs, district attorneys, law enforcement experts have said, if there is an active shooter on a school campus or in a school building, the last thing you want is your child fumbling for their cell phone, trying to call mom or dad, possibly disclosing where they are. Their cell phone could go off and identify their location. That jeopardizes their lives. Also, they might be wanting to film the situation and send it to their friends. And the number one responsibility in that event lies on the shoulders of a teacher, a highly trained professional at the front of the classroom who knows what to do. She will lead those children to safety, and that is the best outcome in that scenario. And so that is what I learned. That gave me great assurance. And I know it's hard for parents, breaking that umbilical cord that has been there since your mom, since the conception of your baby. And it is hard. But there will be opportunities for emergency calls and access two-way communication from every school district is required to have a plan for that, whether it's a phone in the principal's office, like it used to be, or whatever mechanisms they set up. We've left that to the schools. But that was also important to us as well. There's also a series of exemptions if someone needs translation services through their cell phone, or they have a health problem, diabetes monitoring, for example, exceptions there. If a child is an older child and is responsible primary caregiver for a younger sibling, to have access. So there are those exceptions that deal with life's realities, but on balance, I think parents are not going to recognize your children at the end of this just after a few months, because they'll be emerging as more fully adaptive adults. That's our job, is to send young people out from the world who can deal with interpersonal skills and have them fully developed, and to do more in life than just staring at a cell phone all day. They're going to have friends in person. There's going to be laughter in the hallways again. There's going to be communication where it is silence now, and that is what the experience of this school district has been. Mr. President, Superintendent, you want to talk about concerns of parents? How you address those?
Yeah, sure. I think that we've created a really simplified way for families to communicate directly with their young people through our cohort offices with administration, and or the ability for them to email their young person during the day. And just to amplify the governor's messaging about meeting with law enforcement partners in those, we hope, God forbid, in emergency situations, where our young people are not putting misinformation out. And so what we did was did some tabletop exercises with local law enforcement, primarily the Orange County Office of Emergency Management, the state police, and the City of Middletown Police Department, and planned for, if we get into a situation like that, what are some options that we have. And it kind of came to us when I was watching one of my son's lacrosse games, and I saw that in an instant, the trainer needed to get access to a young person and cut equipment. And I watched them use the athletic trainer scissors. And so we came back and tested it out with our team and said, well, we have fire extinguishers in classrooms. We have AED machines. We have Stop the Bleed kits. Maybe we should be adding a pair of athletic trainer scissors to classrooms so that if you get into a situation where you absolutely have no other recourse and have to use a cell phone that is inside a locked pouch, that is how they will gain access to them.
Any other on topics?
Yes, Governor, you mentioned that you're a mother quite often. I am too. And I know that when you take a phone away from a teenager, it's not an easy thing to do. And it is kind of like a drug. It's an addiction for many, many young people. Are we prepared as a state, as a state of educators, to deal with the withdrawal? Because there will be withdrawal, I'm sure, in those initial days.
No, we've been sending out communications, but each school district has taken ownership of this. And, the President Estrada can talk about some of the steps they took to help deal with this weaning process. The transition, I believe, coming off of summer is better than just saying on a Monday you have your cell phone, on a Tuesday you don't. So this gives a time for the school districts to communicate. There are strategies being sent out to parents so they can start dealing with this and having the communication with their students and their children, and letting some school districts have even had in their own families, cell phone free Monday. One school superintendent told me, and he said, our kids are talking to us at the dinner table at night. It's actually very nice, even at home. And bringing out board games, and his children are starting to play with each other as siblings. And so it's a world of difference, but I think parents also have to look at their own behavior. Parents are addicted. And when you're on your cell phone, when you're supposed to be having your family dinner, it sends a message that there's something more important than your child. And that's something we all need to be careful about. And so maybe overall, life will be more enriched outside the classroom as well as we promote. And we've been doing this since last summer, and earnestly this year, is this Get Offline, Get Outside initiative. Reminding kids there's playgrounds and there's community centers and there's basketball courts and swimming pools and other activities that take them out of their basements where they're spending their summer just staring at their hand in a very unhealthy way and subjected to negative messages all day long. I mean, I'll tell you, the addictive algorithms are not positive, uplifting experiences. And so your child's mental health will improve dramatically, especially if you can help them get ready this summer, reinforce it at home, practice at home. So are there any other techniques that you want to share with parents?
Yeah, I think one of the messages that we always say, and it's kind of funny that in our graduation, I used the word addiction in the commencement address about that. We always have a negative connotation about addiction. Well, let's try to do some positive things. Let's get them addicted to other things, like speaking with each other, speaking with their peers. Right before we walked into this room, our executive principal, Billy Donahue, said at home his kids discovered board games all over again. So there's a different way to kind of guide the conversation. At the Board of Education, our first address this past year when we were doing the Yonder Pouch expansion to the middle schools was to speak to the parents, because that's where it has to start. Changing the culture at home helps change the culture in school when it comes to cell phones. So hopefully what this does is encourage them to get addicted to other things that are much better in life than doing this every single day.
Thank you.
And also I'll add that even listening to the students, they appreciated this school district of, knowing that they couldn't just take something away and not replace it with something. And they said that they were putting out, some chess boards and some video games, and the kids are playing a little bit of Nintendo, old school, not during instruction time, but just together in cohorts. And so I think there's just a different world. And one school district was talking about how the kids want to have photos of themselves with their friends, and they can't do that without a cell phone, so they made Polaroid phones available. So the kids are kind of intrigued with old school technology. It was kind of cool again. and to be able to walk in with their photo in their hand, which is rather unusual. So there's a whole brave new world out there, and we just have to go back to sort of the roots, the simpler life, and just enjoy the experience of being a child again, because our kids aren't kids anymore. They're consuming content all day long that is taking them out of the real world and into a place that is not healthy for them, and the effects have been devastating in many families.
Great. And we'll take 1 second to excuse our friends from the school.
All right, thank you very much. If you want to talk to the students too, we can bring them in, because
Well, I have one more question, Governor, if you don't mind. Well, actually, two, sorry. Will this apply to Catholic schools, private schools?
it's all schools, yes.
Okay.
It's all schools. Of the 1,100 private, BOCES, charters, public schools in the state, we have over 1,000 already that have submitted their plans. The vast majority got them in by August 1st, but some of the smaller districts, or just an individual charter school, some of them didn't realize that if you weren't applying for the funding, that you were still required to submit the plan. So we're just playing a little catch up with some. In some school districts, they had a policy where you have to first announce the policy and then vote on it a subsequent month. And so some announced in July, and they had to vote on it still.
So even private schools will get the funding?
I believe so. Is it? Check on that.
We can check and get back to you on that.
Okay. It's a per student number.
There are some who say, critics of this plan say that we should be focusing on the root causes, on mental health, and the fact that there's such a lack of mental health services for children in the state and across the country. And how would you address that? Or the,
You know, I'll simply say this. This is the primary driver of our children's mental health crisis. Full stop. The parallels between when addictive algorithms started about a decade ago, and these social media companies been monetizing our children's mental health, bombarding them with these algorithms and taking them many times to dark places. That occurred around the same time that people started thinking it's okay to have cell phones in schools. They became more common and basically never left a student's hand from early childhood to when they leave for college, off to graduate school. As a result, you know, this has been the world that every student knows, and you tell me why we have higher than usual suicide rates, suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety. All those trend exactly together, as well as the impact of the pandemic on top of it all. So talk to the students about mental health. Talk to them about how they're doing making friends in person for the first time. Many students are experiencing what it's like to have a friend who's not just in a cell phone communication. Talk to them what it's like to do better in school. Their grades are going up. These students will tell you. So the positive so outweighs the negative. I only wish everybody had done this earlier. I really do. Thanks, everybody.
We have time for one off topic.
Governor, with some things going on right now with OCM having to talk to dispensary owners and CDPAP rollout still kind of ongoing, I mean, why is this the right time for redistricting?
I don't understand the premise of the question. You think I can't do three things at once?
Well, one of those things won't matter until 2028, so I would imagine it's more.
No, I think you're misjudging my capability as governor. I deal with hundreds of different issues, sometimes in the course of the same day. I can manage the CDPAP rollout. In fact, it's going now very well. We have over 200,000 people have transitioned to it. The only ones who haven't are the holdouts who have taken us to court, and they're going to lose. So that's my argument on that. And we've had it's working well. So that's behind us. OCM, I have said we're not going to let anyone be displaced because of decisions made that I think were, at odds with what the law was early on. And when you find out, you identify. After I wanted a full autopsy of what's going on in that agency, I wanted to know exactly what is happening with my new leadership. I wanted them to tell me the challenges. They found something that we cannot close our eyes to, a conflict between the application of the policy and the law as it was written. So the law can be changed. The law will be changed. We'll make sure it's consistent. But in the meantime, I have already declared that we will not hurt any company that is already in a location or is in the process of approval. So, and redistricting goes to the fact that our state, as a large state,
as a beneficiary of Medicaid programs, where half of all children in New York State are on Medicaid, a third of all New Yorkers, and hundreds of thousands of families rely on nutrition programs for their meals, or the countless other programs that are being eviscerated because of the Republican domination in Washington. The White House, the House, and the Senate, there are no checks and balances because of what has been happening. And so here you have a situation where the president tells the governor of another state, Texas, to find me 5 more Republican seats. What that'll do is ensure that there's no fair elections next year in 2026, because I know that they've looked at the polls. They know that they're going to lose the House of Representatives in 2026, and that's going to happen because people are rebelling against the policies I just described. So I, as a governor, have an obligation to stand up and fight fire with fire. It's not a path I plan to go down, but I'm not going to let that happen because we are the collateral damage of those decisions in Washington, and I can't let that go on in perpetuity without at least giving the voters a fair chance to change the leadership in Washington, certainly in the House of Representatives in 2026. That's why, and if you want to bring up any other topic, I assure you my capacity for an expansive array of topics is enormous. Women are really good multitaskers. All right, thanks,
So
everybody.
you're not putting politics over government right now?
It's part of government. I'm protecting New York State in what I'm doing. Because all the policies I'm talking about are hurting the people I represent. And I'm going to fight for them. That's what this is about.
Thanks, everybody.
Does anyone want a picture of the